Hey everyone, it's Olivia and welcome back to my channel. So I actually haven't filmed a video in a while and I feel very awkward kind of doing this again after I think it's been 2 weeks. It's just very weird getting into the swing of things again. A couple weeks ago I got sick. It was horrible. I really could not film anything. It would have been really gross. And last week I just had so much work to do. I did get to go to the Hosier concert though, which was amazing, and I had a ton of fun. But in between all of that, I just did not have time to film anything. It's been very hectic, and honestly, I do not know what happened to October. It has passed by so quickly. Next thing I knew, it was Halloween, and then it's November, and NaNoWriMo is starting, and there's just so many things. I just can't believe it's November already. Anyway, I had a pretty ambitious October TBR. It's very ambitious for me, especially because I haven't read in a long time. And in September, I actually only read 2 books. I honestly was hoping I had more time to read in October, but there was just so much work and I've been so stressed. But in between all of that, I did manage to read. And the thing is, for my classes, I actually had to read a lot, and I meant actual books. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw those in there because I did read these. So I'm actually taking an experimental writing class, and in that we're reading experimental writing. So I read Blood and Guts in High School by Acker. It's not what you think it is. It's called a collage novel, so it's got images and it's very interesting text, and highly experimental, and it's just very intense. It's intense, very easy to read, but also you're just kind of sitting there going what am I reading? I read it pretty quickly, so I'm pretty proud of myself. It's also something I've never read experimental writing before, so it was very much a new experience for me. And I said I wanted to try reading things I don't normally read, so I guess I can check that off of my list of things that I wanted to start doing with this channel, except it's not for this channel. I did it because of school. In addition to that, I also read another book for this experimental class called Autobiography of Read by Carson. This one is less, well, I wouldn't say less intense, but there's kind of a lot going on. It's very metaphorical and there's just a lot of things, but it's a little more calmer than the Acker one. That one's probably more just really in your face. This one's a little more mellow. It's actually based off of one of the trials of Hercules when he has to face this red-winged monster named Geryon, and it's actually from Geryon's perspective, and it twists the kind of who's the monster, who's the villain type thing. But keep in mind, this is still experimental writing, so it's not a rewrite of mythology. It's very, very much experimental. And what I mean by that is this one is kind of considered poetry, so a lot of it's kind of written in a poetic format, but it's not poetry and it is narrative. So the whole point about these 2 books is that they're subverting genres and breaking the rules of what you expect to be a novel. I think as a writer they're very interesting to read because I've been writing some experimental stuff, and it's been kind of freeing to write in just these different forms and these kinds of ways that you wouldn't normally think about your writing. So if you're a writer and you haven't read experimental writing or tried it, you should. I think you don't ever have to go down that path, but I think it's very eye-opening and very freeing to kind of think about writing in a different way. I also read another book that's experimental. It's less experimental, closer to fiction type, and that's Itza by Rios De La Luz. And I actually really like this book. I would keep this book. I really genuinely like it. It's about a generation of water witches who live close to the Mexican-American border, and they are being sexually abused. And so basically what is so interesting about this book is that it's written as sort of this spell and this ritual that brings attention to sexual abuse and is trying to kind of end that. And that's amazing, and it's genuinely a really good story, and it has a lot of meaning. So if you're interested in some experimental, but that's something that's still closer to fiction, I would say you should read this. I actually really like this book. So that's actually 3 books already, which I'm surprised they do count just because I read them. I'm also taking an Asian American lit class, and for that I've read a few books. So I read Lust Caution by Eileen Chang. As you can tell, it's really thin, very small, quick read. I think I read this in a few hours. The thing about this book though is that it is translated from Chinese, so that's like a huge like language barrier type issue with reading this, because it felt very unusual reading it because it was very stilted and it didn't really flow correctly, and that's probably because it is translated and it's a very short piece too. And then the other book I read for my Asian American lit class is No No Boy by John Okada. This is like considered the first Japanese American novel, which is really interesting and cool to read, except for the fact that it is very dense. There is so much information in here that does not need to be in there. If I could like go through this and just like I could like rip pages out that are unimportant to the story and like inner monologues that are just way too long. So basically it is a story about a no-no boy, which is basically someone who was a Japanese American during World War II who refused and said no to joining the military and fighting for America's side because they were fighting Japan. And so he was basically imprisoned, and then the war ends and he comes home and has to adjust to what's happened to his family since then. His father is an alcoholic, his mother believes that Japan actually won the war, and his brother is very bitter towards him and wants to join the military, and it is just him kind of just adjusting to post-war America and being Japanese American. Oh, it's very intense. It's quite a loaded subject. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this book, and it is just, oh, I did not enjoy reading this. Not just because it was for class, but also, like I said, it was very dense with information that I felt was completely unnecessary. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't even really understand what happened at the end. I should probably Google it, especially because this is for a class, but I just want to be done with this book, so I am done with this book. So that is 5 books that I read in October, but I don't know how I managed, but in between that I did get to read something that was on my TBR, and that's Nevernight by J. Kristoff. I actually had the ebook checked out from the library, and I actually started reading this before October, and then I had to return the book and then put it on hold and wait for forever for it. And so I read a majority of it in October. I'm gonna be honest with you, I finished it a couple days ago at the beginning of November, but it still counts for October because I read the majority of it. What ended up happening was that I got really busy and had to return the book before I could read the rest of it, and I just took my phone and I just screen recorded me just tapping through the pages, and then I returned the book, and then I just would like go through the video and click pause and play every time the page turned, and hey, it works. So free tip, if you are checking something out from the library on an app and you haven't had time to read it before you have to return it and put it on hold and wait for forever for it again, you can just screen record like 2 seconds per page and then you can read it. Oh my gosh, Nevernight was so good. I am really happy that I read it. It honestly was not what I expected it to be, but it is really good. I was shocked multiple times. I thoroughly enjoyed it. For those of you who don't know what Nevernight's about, I'm very bad with words, but basically it is about a school of assassins. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with that, but with like fantastical elements to it. The main character, Mia, basically goes on this journey to find this school, and she goes through all this like super intense training, and like they're very violent, and I do have to stress that this is an adult fantasy novel, and so beware. I really liked this book, and I honestly would give it 4 out of 5 stars. My 5 stars I'm very picky about, so I'm gonna keep it at 4, but I'm really excited to read the sequel, God's Grave. I actually do have that checked out from the library right now. Yeah, so in the end, I read 1 book for my TBR and 5 books that were technically just for class, but they count. So I read 6 books, which honestly is a record. I don't think I've ever read 6 books in 1 month before. Yeah. So if you liked this video, give it a like, and if you want to see more of my stuff, then hit subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next week. Thank you. Bye.